Good afternoon Pacific, or actually good evening Pacific Standard Time. It's 5 o'clock here in Los Angeles. Welcome. My name is Mohamed Sharif. I'm a faculty in the Architecture and Design Department, and I'm super excited to lead this online info session about the M.Arch 1, the Master of Architecture First Professional Degree course at UCLA that we run. There is a chat function in the Zoom environment. Please feel free to put your questions in there. I'm accompanied by Tess Stevenson and Kat English from the department, as well as Jim Keys, who is a chief student advisor in our department, and Jim particularly will be able to help answer some questions. We're up to about, I think we're at 20 attendees right now, and I think what I'm going to do is launch into a slideshow to give you guys sort of an overview of the degree course, the nature of the environment at UCLA, also in Los Angeles, flavor of the faculty involved, and hope that that's super stimulating for you. It certainly is for me. This is my 10th year of teaching, and every year that I teach here, I thank my lucky stars that I'm in this community that keeps me sharp and puts me on my toes. So I'm going to share my screen. So again, welcome to UCLA Architecture and Urban Design. I'm Mohamed Sharif, faculty, and I'll be going through the kind of curriculum. Before I start, I have to kind of give a shout out for this amazing world city that we live in. This wonderful metropolis, creative hub on the Pacific Rim. A massive center for creativity, technological advancement, obviously media, it's a hotbed of speculative experimental design for over a century, a magnet for experimental people, wonderful climate. You live within a few hours of the most sort of extreme spectrum of climates in terms of their availability for their scenic beauty, recreational beauty. From you can ski mountains, you can be out in the hottest of deserts, you can be on the ocean, and enjoy this amazing city of ours. UCLA, the #1 public research university in the country. Beautiful campus, a stone's throw away from everything that is vibrant about Los Angeles, and kind of a city on a hill in and of itself. Beautiful and august. And again, 10 years in, every time I walk it, I pinch myself and think, sheesh, I am very lucky to be affiliated with this place. We are located at Perloff Hall, which is towards the north end of our leafy campus, close to the rest of the departments in the School of Arts and Architecture, film and TV, design, media arts, world art and dance. World art, cultures and dance, and so on. Fine arts. This is, you'll see images of the courtyard in here, which is sort of the hub of our social life, images of studio life, which is essentially the spaces in which you learn and interact. Architecture, educationally, it's a dialogic discipline, meaning we are forever in conversation, forever talking while we work, while we produce work, engaged in criticism, constructive criticism, feedback loops, and kind of culture of sharing. Bottom left, to speak to the culture of sharing and sort of student agency and initiative. recent graduates, Rain Laborde and Sami Hassan, editors of Pool, a student-led publication, annual publication that really, the content is super high, speaks highly of our student body, as well as our capacity to reach out to the most exacting, brilliant minds across the globe to be in a spectrum of discourses around our field, architecture. We also have a sister campus known as the Ideas Campus, that is for the M.Arch 2, which is the post-professional degree. It's a one-year intensive master's degree for people with a professional undergrad, a 5-year degree typically. And that is a technology hub full of robot arms and a plethora of VR stuff and things that are just, for a Luddite like me, I'm just always in awe that we have that too. There are crossover opportunities as you go through our 3-year degree course to take classes over there. Indeed, you may opt to take your final year course, courses over at Ideas. Ideas is in Culver City. It is about a 20-minute drive away in good traffic, maybe double that in a typical LA traffic, although COVID traffic is a different story. Maybe one of the things we'll miss about COVID is just how relatively easy it is to drive around LA and get to places reasonably quickly. We are, again, as I said, the #1 public research university in the United States, one of the leading universities in the world, and it is no coincidence that our faculty is world-class, world-known, renowned for contributions in their particular spheres to architecture as a design discipline, as a theoretical discipline, and as a kind of, let's say, an activist discipline with outreach through think tanks that address the humanities in the city. So cutting edge design, cutting edge thinking, global and regional relationships that allow students to see where they are in the world and how to be and how to contribute. That's what our faculty brings to the table. That's what they're expected to do. Facilities, top-notch facilities, both at Perloff and Ideas. As I said, robots galore. And I would say that in terms of fabrication facilities at Perloff, the shop was a pioneering space 20-some years ago when our department became the first department in the country to really kind of tool up and bring in the latest digitally and computationally oriented fabrication machinery, hardware, and software. As I mentioned before, our faculty is world-renowned, from Neil Denari, who you should look up on our faculty webpage. Our current chair, Heather Roberge, we're listing their practice names here because practice, what you do out in the world and what you do in the studio and in the classroom and in the seminar room, we expect to have to be very related, and we help students to connect to the world in that way. We're a very small department and we pride ourselves on being so. So an incoming class is anywhere from 35 to 45 students with a student ratio of about 1 to 10 or 1 to 11 in terms of your instructors. That means we're a tight-knit community, and given the kind of global reach and influence, we are well positioned to help you find your feet in the world. And it's a sort of a 6 degrees of separation thing between us and the best practices, the best settings for you to get going in the world. So Neil, our current chair, Heather ROBERGE, her practice Murmur. This is an installation that Heather did a number of years ago. Aluminum fabrication at SciArc, a private school here in Los Angeles. The previous chair, current Professor Hitoshi Abe, Atilia Hitoshi Abe. This is a project that Hitoshi completed at the university in Vienna, in Austria. Recent addition to our full-time tenured faculty, Kutan AYALA, of the renowned speculative practice Young and AYALA. This is their winning entry for the Bauhaus 2.0 a few years ago in Germany, I think in Dessau. Greg Lynn of Greg Lynn Form. Greg is the sine qua non of pioneering in terms of digital fabrication, computation, robotics, and how they impact not only architectural design but experiential design. Greg is the leading theorist in that sphere in the world. Dana Cuff, Professor Dana Cuff, who is in charge of City Lab, which is a think tank, is also in charge of the Urban Humanities Initiative, which is a certificate program for students enrolled in the master's degree to kind of work on sociologically, culturally conscious, kind of community-oriented projects, not only in Los Angeles, but in the broader region, including Central America, including Mexico, Mexico City, and so on. So Dana, a project that is featured here is a project that Dana completed with fellow faculty Kevin Daly called The Biome, looking at speculative but realizable, ecologically driven backyard homes in Los Angeles. This is a prototype. Michael Osman, history and theory professor, a leading voice on architectural technology, its history, how it appeared in the world, and how it sort of manifests in the world, and the myriad implications thereof. This is his PhD turned into a kind of must-read pedagogical tome. A recent addition to our full-time tenured faculty is Professor AYALA LEVIN, who's also an historian, is a leading scholar in terms of colonial and post-colonial architecture and urbanism in Africa. Colleague Georgina Ulic, her practice Patterns, a project depicted here, which is an office building for a medical company with outpatient facilities, a project that I'm proud to have worked with, also along with our faculty partner Todd Lynch. Our colleague Jimenez Lai, pictured in bottom right, sitting in his amazing installation a few years back at Coachella. Jimenez is a world-renowned architectural fantasist, illustrator, novelist, illustration novelist, and someone who is just infectious to be around in terms of his enthusiasm for narrative, kind of all things filmic and imaginative about what architecture can be. Julia Corner, this is on the left, you see award-winning costume design for Oscar-winning films. Julia is a faculty who is world known for her work in terms of digital fabrication, computation, and bringing that to the realms of haute couture. That's just a snapshot of the few people on our faculty. I do invite you to peruse the faculty website, go a little deep, take a look at who's here and how your interests and affinities might align with our roster. As a public university, as a vibrant global presence, we pride ourselves on top-notch, world-class public programs, invited speakers, symposia, um, ideas, themes, topics, their relevance, and their resonance. They get broadcast from our department, and you are involved with that, so that truly augments your education. We are also invested as a dialogical entity, as a community that is convinced that we have something offered to make the world a better place. We feel obligated to broadcast that through exhibitions, through annual end-of-year shows, extravaganzas, and periodic ones in our gallery. So that was just kind of me running really quickly through to try to communicate a little bit of the atmospherics of our culture, to give you a sort of a flavor of our culture. Here I want to spend a few minutes, if you just give me two seconds to situate, to talk about sort of like the logistical setup of your 3 years here at AUD, Architecture and Urban Design. It is a 3-year course, the first 2 years of which we refer to as core, C-O-R-E. And in those first 2 years, there is a kind of a very well thought out diet and sequence of curricular content that we guide you through. That includes, and we operate on the quarter system. So you're working in 3 11-week chunks of time, where we typically inject a semester's worth of content into 11 weeks. So let's say 16 into 11. So it's fast-paced. We take care of you. We don't overwork you, but we expect you to perform at a high level. Should you join us, know for a fact that you are the cream of the crop and that you are more than capable of performing. Life revolves around the design studio. So 411 in the fall, 412 in the winter, 401 in the spring. That is a kind of steady sequence that scales up from formal meditations, learning techniques, 2D and 3D techniques of form making, formal analysis, understanding geometry and how to manipulate it, understanding space, the organization of environments, and kind of making that visible. These are nourished by intro to computing in the fall, intro to building construction, and building climatology in the spring, in the winter and spring. There's hardcore structures, understanding how things stand up that run in parallel, and that sort of gives you a basis of form, space, order, how things work architecturally. In the fall, 201 theories of architecture, you get introduced to discourse, ideas, and that really is what permeates the culture of the school. And while you won't have it again as a class with units, you will be able to sign up for electives, and as I mentioned with our public programming, you will be by osmosis immersed in a theoretical environment, idea-driven environment. In the second year of core, we scale up a little bit. So you see the title of the studio. The first one in the fall is building design with landscape. Typically, we're looking at housing. So we're looking at bigger things that affect real life, more particularly that are sited on real sites. And along with that, we are looking at professional practice. And then you begin, the curriculum frees up for more kind of elective opportunities. I think in the first year as well, there are workshop opportunities that will pop up, weekend workshops, and so on. In the winter of the second year, you are doing the comprehensive studio, which is a kind of a detailed building design studio. Along with that, the theory of programming, which is a sort of a sociologically driven class taught by Professor Dana Cuff about how human beings exist, the institutions, the ecologies that they set up, and how that might impact form, space, and order. You are learning about environmental controls, heating, ventilating, air conditioning. And then in the spring, you get your first taste of what it's like to be a third-year student with the major buildings design studio, which is the first time that you get to choose or submit your choice and hope to get your first choice, which you regularly do, for a topic-driven studio that is not so real-life based necessarily, but maybe more experimental. There's a building construction class that you take along with that, as well as kind of room for electives. In your second year, typically there's room that opens up also for independent studies. These are projects that you might put forward, find a faculty that would sponsor, and that would go through a kind of vetting process with the department to determine whether or not it's up to snuff, and that's something that you can do as well. Again, we're here for you. The third year is a standalone year in the sense that it does not repeat the culture of core, but it depends obviously on core to get you there. It is the research studio year, where for 3 quarters you work with one faculty whom you elect to work with based on your affinity and interest in a topic that she or he has put on the table in the fall of the third year. And you spend 2 quarters, fall and winter, sort of amassing research, usually also working in design, to get ready for a big kind of your take, your project, your take on a bigger theme. Along with that, you have two topic studios, 2 advanced topic studios, which are also lottery studios, where you get to pick from either internal faculty or external invited faculty, usually to work on something that is also experimental in nature, speculative in nature, and not necessarily bound to the more kind of necessary kind of fundamentals of the core, especially first year and second year. Comprehensive studio and building design with landscape dimensions. And of course, there's a host of electives. There are a host of independent studies that you can come up with, workshops that come up, and of course, teaching apprenticeship opportunities, TA opportunities along this, where you can, if you're interested in teaching, interested in going a bit deeper, that is available to you too. So that's a kind of overview of the 3-year sequence. I think I have tons of slides left, and I'm not going to speak through them. Just look at them kind of as a visually, enjoy them with your eyes as a catalog of the kinds of things that you do. And we are looking at the design studios right now, going from first year core, second year core, topics, and then the culmination of spring research in your final year. So this is work the kind of work that we've seen over the past few years coming out of first year studio: geometry, form, representation, analysis, imaging, drawing, and so on and so forth. Model making, physical, digital, fake physical, color, texture, light. And you move on to a studio that we call architectural organization, where ideas of plan, how you lay things out according to certain systems that are adopted, usually by looking at precedents and transforming them, drawing them, making models of them, rationalizing them, bringing elementary ideas of structure to bear on them, sometimes positioning them in the city. And then you finish your first year of core in what we call tech core, where we look at the architectural section and elevation and the relationship between the two. Past couple of years, we've looked at fusing a gym with a parking structure and looking at novel outcomes sort of in the middle and on the edge, how ramp systems and parking structures could meet more gentle ramp systems and step systems in gymnasia, and how large spaces in gymnasia or bathhouses could interact and how they might manifest themselves as volumes in infill sites in the city, novel ways of drawing them, imaging them, and generally enjoying and sharing the enjoyment of this resultant kind of friction between movement, vehicular movement, people movement, pleasure, leisure, and tight spaces in the city. Here's a flavor of some of the technology seminars and construction. These are sort of like not full studio based, but definitely working with studio techniques and abilities. Fabrication, computation, materiality, machination, video, film, novel takes on sustainability, then we come to the first studio in second year, which we've abbreviated, building and landscape, abbreviated here to urban landscape, where we typically look at housing, larger architectural programs, briefs that call for multi-unit on sites that typically deal with kind of interesting, challenging, contextual parameters. This one was housing near the water, near the LA River. Housing in Culver City. And then the kind of the big studio in the winter of 415, the last sort of dealer's choice studio, where it's us telling you what to do because we do know better, but we're not arrogant. We don't mean it that way, but we're your guides for 5 quarters, and then we step aside and let you choose a little bit. The comprehensive design studio, which really looks at everything that you've known, that you've learned and that you know, and bringing it to bear on a building and depicting that building at a much more specific technical level than ever before. Structures, systems, space, form, order, cladding, site. This is work from a few years ago for a site in the West Adams district of Los Angeles. Incredibly detailed drawings, as you can see, that really show how things are made, what they're made of, and what those atmospheric effects would be. Also work from that year. Work from a recent year for a student center on campus. This is actually last year. And then in the spring, it's your first lottery where 4 of us who teach core share one syllabus as a general theme, but then each of us looks at it in her or his particular way, and students sign up for those affinities. We've run a firehouse for quite a few years, where we look at different ways to make firehouses in the city. and also outside of the city. And we've also recently turned our attention to ferry terminals, their relationship to the water's edge, to the edge of a city, while also thinking about ideas of sea level rise and climate change. So in your third year, you enlist for your research studio, and it takes 3 quarters to complete. The first 2 quarters are research oriented, as I mentioned. You're kind of gathering information in teams, beginning sort of design conjectures, positioning yourself for a spring where you're producing a project, not unlike any of the projects that you've seen. Along with that, in fall and winter, you get 2 opportunities to sign up for advanced topic studios that are kind of standalone immersive design experiences, either with internal faculty or external faculty. Here is a spectrum, images from different studios. And then, as I said, the combination of your third year and your 3 years at AUD is the final project, the research studio project. And usually there are 4 faculty that offer those in that year. Sometimes a handful of students opt to take their whole research studio at ideas, depending on what the topics are. So here's also a spectrum of projects and also how they appear in the final show. Large-scale housing, meditations on the relationship between architecture and urbanism and water, thinking through sustainability, novel ideas about living and working as a kind of fusion, ideas of infrastructural buildings in the city. Here, the Department of Water and Power, buildings that are typically mute and background, but actually are hives of neurological kind of infrastructural activity, rethinking how they might be made and how they might appear. Ideas of kind of extreme urbanism, let's call it that, where you are looking at architecture manifesting at an infrastructural scale, not unlike the freeway here, occupying the space of a median, hovering above it. Meditations on what to do with empty sites that are being decommissioned. Here, the Santa Monica Airport. Places to live, places to work. New conceptions of high-rises, the relationship between graphics and tectonics, graphics and plan making, elevation making, section making, and bookmaking. That the outcome of your research studio would also be a publication that would be a kind of a celebration of a year spent working as a team and then working individually on something at a profound scale. Images from the final show, other books, images from recent manifestations of the Live Work studio. A recent studio looking at digital media and how culture is made manifest through digital media and how it impacts interior space and digital space. Ideas of structure and public space. Here, a market for Hollywood. The idea of timber in the city, cross-laminated timber, new instantiations of wood as something beyond a single or two-story box. And along with this, when I mentioned kind of history and theory, your electives are typically from the realms of critical studies and the kind of technology seminars. So AYALA, Levin, Cristobal Amunategui, Michael Osman, these are world-known published theorists whose areas of interest will no doubt be of interest to you. Modernism and technology with Michael, public spectacle, public enjoyment, Cristobal, AYALA, the idea of, as it says, territorial planning in the global south. So looking at kind of non-Western regions, and looking off the beaten path at manifestations of architecture and urbanism. And I think that is it. The email for the department is here, admissions@aud.ucla.edu. And the application deadline is December 15th. So I'm gonna stop my share and just take a breather for 2 seconds and wet my whistle and turn right back to you. Not bad. That was 35 minutes. So give me 2 seconds.
In the meantime, you guys, I see a lot of questions have come through on the Q&A box. Feel free to keep sending those through, and we'll kind of address those during the Q&A session. We'll get started in a minute or two.
Okay, I'm back.
Mohamed, it looks like we have a few questions in the Q&A box. If you want to pull those up, I'm also happy to read them out to you.
Let me see. They're in the Q&A box. Okay, great. So first question that I see. Is the approach of the studio culture more computational than manual? Great question. I would say that we are more computational than manual, but not doctrinaire in terms of only computational. And that I would say we're way more multimedia now than we were maybe like 10 years ago, actually. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that usually when I hear that question or read that question, I feel like it comes from a place of like hesitation, that the computational means the technological means the complex or the complicated. Rest assured that we teach you everything that you need to know, and we never leave anyone behind. So it's a bit of everything. I'd say it includes these days way more filmmaking than ever before. So that's another kind of tool that we give you. Another question about UCLA Architecture's initiatives to engage in sustainable development with local communities. That is a very good question. And I think it's endemic. You sort of like, you've got to look at the student work, and then you'll see sort of threads in terms of sustainability, in terms of direct relationships with local communities. Look at City Lab in particular, and also look up the Urban Humanities Initiative, because sustainability is not only an environmental concern, I mean paramount, it's environmental, but it's also kind of a cultural concern. And so difficult subjects, tough subjects like gentrification and so on are things that our department is consciously kind of engaged with, and helping students become proactive agents in helping. So I'm happy to tell you that today I just learned that 4 of my previous students from this time last year just won a really prestigious award because they continued to work on a project that we had done together in studio that was looking at particularly at cooling and adaptive reuse in Chicago. So they won a really big prize. And that wasn't just a studio that I taught on my own. I also taught it with the climatology professor. And we engaged people from big offices in Chicago, their cooling district. So we do it at all levels. It's not necessarily one kind of specific center. It's diffuse, but Urban Humanities Initiative and City Lab are places where you need to look too. Typical careers, options for international students after graduation. Typically, I don't know what the visa status is right now, but usually at least a year of working here is what I know is on the table. Is that correct, Jim?
In terms of optional practical training for students that want to pursue
Yes.
that.
Yes.
So you can, as long as you are here, hey everybody, as long as you are here physically present in the US for the year leading up to your completion, which we hope 2 years from now, or actually that'd be almost 3 years from now, that won't be an issue. You are eligible for a year of OPT, which can be extended an additional 2 years with the STEM OPT that we have qualified for as an M.Arch program. We are STEM certified. So you can actually study for up to 3 years of STEM by completing your M.Arch degree. 3 years of OPT by completing your M.Arch degree.
Thank you, Jim. That was super helpful. A question about trimesters instead of semesters. Very good question. Objectively, I would say that you get more bang for your buck in a quarter system than you do in a semester system, because we put the equivalent of a semester's work in 11 weeks. We're seasoned at this. We know what we're doing, and it has proven to be incredibly successful. With that said, the UC system has for a long time been transitioning to the semester system. I think we'll be late adopters. I don't know if it's going to happen, should you join us next fall. I don't think it's going to happen anytime very soon. But certainly once we move to semester systems, I think we know it enough to also make the semester system better for our experience in the quarter system. Question about again, when I hear this, oops, sorry, just disappeared from it. If you don't have a strong background degree in architecture, what are typical things you look for in an application? That's a very good question. Usually it's asked by people who feel like intimidated by strength of the portfolio. We are looking typically at a mix of 60% non-architecture, 40% architecture. It might slip to 50-50, it just depends on the years, but we're committed to the first professional degree being something that is available to people from non-architecture backgrounds. And so we are not putting all of the stock on portfolio prowess. What we are looking for is a clear, coherent, impassioned statement speaking to the kind of translation capacity of your previous experiences to a degree in architecture, a case for why you would want to specifically work with us at UCLA, and to do the best that you can to make your authentic self be heard as someone who wants to invest in higher education. So clarity of mission, avoiding cliches, It's not ever since I was a kid. I like to draw and I like math. We're looking for something deeper than that. Another question. Do you do research about virtual or augmented reality? Yes, we do. We have classes on that. It's not, specific classes like electives. Actually, they're not electives. Some of them are core, intro to computation, and then you can specialize in that for an entire year if you would like for your final year in terms of studio. There was a question about the advice for students coming from a non-architecture background to prepare. I think I covered that a little bit, but I would say to just sort of like repeat and expand a little bit. Think about who you are. Think about what you've done so far as translatable preparation for a life that is dedicated to form, space, organization, to making the world a better place. I am convinced that if you think a little bit laterally, even if you're coming from like discrete calculus or economics, there are ways to speak to your interest in organization, interrelationships, communication, inspiration that square beautifully with what architects do. The ideal candidate for the M.Arch program. What is the ideal candidate for the M.Arch program? Driven, chatty, can't get enough of many experiences, discursive, meaning can move a lot across a lot of territory, but also able to focus. So we're looking for a zesty, open-minded all-rounder who questions things, but participates in answering things by producing work that contributes to something bigger than herself, bigger than himself. What should we ensure to include or highlight in our portfolio submission if we have no design background? Very good question. We're looking for simplicity, clarity of presentation, consistency. If you have spent some time photographing things in the world, try to format them in a way that speaks to, let's say, balance of object on a page, and then how we turn pages and how that balance might be consistent or deliberately inconsistent. No typos, simple descriptions of what we're looking at. Writing, I would submit to you that if you've written something and that it's been published, that you actually present that as an image. So photography, painting, sculpture, pottery, anything of the fine or applied arts, simply formatted, clearly communicated. Writing, that might include also unpublished poetry, for example. Think of how a poet like E.E. Cummings challenged our ideas about how to put words on a page and how words would interrelate internally to an idea or an emotion, and how they would make that manifest in white space around black type. So hope that answers the question. Also, don't be shy to reach out to people with a design background, not to cheat, but to become accustomed to the idea of constructive critique. Don't be afraid to go online. I think we have a resource that maybe Tess or Kat could put in the chat for portfolio tips. So look around you, talk, seek out constructive criticism. Did I talk a little bit about the dual degree M.Arch and M Master of Urban Planning? It's available. It's fantastic. We have students that do it. You will, be walking a few hundred feet to Luskin. I can't speak to the specifics of the program, but I invite you to go onto our website. And I am sure that for those of you who are interested, we can arrange an open house, an information session with some of our recent graduates who I think would be more than happy to share. Are there design build-up opportunities? Yes, there are, as you saw in the City Lab project by Dana Cuff, the biome that I showed. There have been a plethora of design build opportunities. I think ideas, because of the robotics and fabrication capacity, there's that too, usually at the scale of something from a hut to a small house. Next question, rough breakdown of the student body, backgrounds. Yeah, I think 60%, let's say between 50 and 60% non-architecture, between 40 and 50% architecture. It just depends on the cohort. I mean, honestly, the question is what backgrounds are coming from and how prior education can play into the program. It doesn't matter if you've studied Russian or zoology. I've taught Russian majors and zoology majors, econ majors, chemistry majors, literature majors. I mean, it runs the spectrum. As long as you are prepared, as I said earlier, in terms of positioning prior knowledge and abilities in the service of something, and that you can translate those things, your previous education will be an invaluable foundation for architectural design. Imagine a world where architecture was designed by people who didn't know about other stuff. It would be a boring place. Are there any travel studios or other opportunities? Tons. Once this COVID stuff lifts, typically in your third year, there are, those topic studios. You'll get to travel Mexico City, Barcelona, Paris, closer cities, farther cities. So yes, and usually we'll find you a little bit of funding. There's a question about the ideas, facilities integrated into studio. Are these facilities open to use freely? Nothing is open to use freely. It's because of the nature, the fragility of things, and just how expensive things are and how in demand things are. These are class-based, meaning whether it's a tech seminar or studio-based, and then they're absolutely open to you. And if you're enrolled at Ideas for your third year, they're really part and parcel of what you do in your previous year, particularly second year core. If you enroll in tech seminars, you'll find yourself doing stuff over there. Any organized summer activities? It's on pause right now, but we have a 4-week summer program that runs for those of you who are, like you, who are interested in a grad degree. Usually that's for college students or people who've completed college and thinking about it. That's a great program for second years and third years in architecture, particularly third years who also want to teach, so they get involved. We also have, parallel with that, a 2 and a 3-week high school program, which is also great for first year and second year M.Arch students who want to teach to get involved as well. How many international students get accepted in the M.Arch program? That's the last question on my docket right now. I will leave that. I mean, statistically, I don't know the exact statistics, but our pool is an international pool. It's probably half and half. Is that?
Probably about roughly that. I think the thing to keep in mind is that we're not particularly targeting a particular number. We're just looking for the strongest applicants in a particular applicant pool. Yeah. So that number can fluctuate higher or lower depending on the strength of applications. But we do have a very strong contingent of international students in the M.Arch program.
Yep. And then the last question in front of me is, are there any internship and employment programs? If if you wouldn't mind chiming in, what I will say is that we work really hard to connect people through fairs, through with interested offices. We run portfolio prep, and our outreach is like unbelievable. I know, Kat, maybe you can speak also to like the degree of success of employment.
Sure. Yeah, I'm the director of outreach. Hi, everyone. So we do have a pretty comprehensive program of outreach activities that start from the minute you get here and run all the way through the third year in the M.Arch program. We typically host a number of events in the winter to kind of get you ready to prep for a summer internship. So that includes a portfolio prep workshop, which is usually hosted by faculty. And then we also have a portfolio review. So once you've worked on the portfolio, you review, and we bring in a lot of local kind of community members and alumni for that. So it's a really nice event where you can meet some of our alumni as well. And then the final event is a big career day, which this year will be virtual, but normally it's hosted at Pearl of Hall, and we have, I think last year we had about 50 companies participating, and they host a table and you can chat to them and learn more about opportunities there. In terms of, success rate, I think most of our students do really well, and because they are prepared with their portfolios. We do have pretty deep roots in the Los Angeles community, including so many of our faculty who actually have their own practices. So, a lot of our students actually go on to work for some of our faculty as well, both in their professional firms, but on research projects in our research centers and various different roles. So lots of avenues.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that I have a small practice, and we have 4 full-time employees. There are 4 UCLA students. 2 of them have been with us for 3 years. 2 for just under 2 years. So just even our little engine that could that's 5% of a class right there. Well paid and reasonably happy and working on interesting things. There's a question about are there fully funded scholarships? The answer is yes, correct?
There are some scholarships that would fully fund for fees and tuition, but if by fully funded you mean including like stipends for living expenses and that sort of thing, for the most part we don't have that. We do have recruitment fellowships that can cover all of your fees, but again, those are limited and done as part of the recruitment evaluation by faculty during the review process of your admissions application.
And then there was another question about how are the class studios taught in the current time with COVID, assuming it will be different in fall 2021. However, we never know. I think looking ahead, obviously fingers crossed, it's hard to speculate, though rest assured, like all institutions of higher education, we're looking at hybrid models and so on and so forth. Again, that's out of our hands. What I will tell you is that we have been in Zoom, like all schools, since the middle of March, and it's going really well. I mean, I wish you were here to be part of it. I think you'd find that it's actually incredibly rewarding and satisfying still. So I think that's all the questions.
Yeah, and I would just make a plug for, Tess put it in the chat, but if you are interested in learning more, as well as the portfolio workshop, we're hosting the graduate open house in later in October. So definitely sign up for that. You'll hear from kind of more about different programs that we have and from a variety of other faculty too. So I hope to see you there.
Well, thank you, everyone. I wish you the best of luck and hope to see you in real life in fall 2021. Thanks, Tess. Thanks, Kat. Thanks, Jim. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.